Welcome to the Church Communications Podcast. We want to help you become a church communications expert. We understand it's a challenging and ever-changing role because we worked in the church too, which is why we built a community of over 30,000 church leaders that are ready to support and cheer you on. Your hosts for the show are Allred, Kenny Jahng, with special guest host from the church communications team. They're here to help you and equip you to better reach your community. We'll talk shop with practitioners, professionals, and communications experts about what's working, what's not, and what's next.
Hey friends, it's that time again. My name is Kenny Jahng here with the Church Communications Podcast. We just love sitting down with new friends that we've been able to meet and share with you some of their stories and great resources that you might be able to discover today in our conversation for you, your family, and your church. Today is not something you should take trivially or casually. We've got a special treat. We've got Erick Goss is on the other side of the screen with me. He is CEO and co-founder of Minno. Welcome to the show, Erick.
Kenny, great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Now, before we get on with the interrogation and the questions and trying to get the value out of it, I just want to share with people who may not have heard of your company or you in particular. Minno is specific. First of all, you're a Nashville-based media technology company that's really focused on helping kids and families experience Jesus every day, both on the screen and off the screen. And I want to talk about that in our conversation today. And then you personally, you're a veteran. You've served in the U.S. Navy, helicopter pilot, and Pentagon spokesperson. Oh my gosh, I wish we had a whole other hour just to talk about your life experiences there. Prior to Minno, Erick has served as the senior manager at Amazon and has later helped VeggieTales creator Phil Vischer, you might know, launch the award-winning show Buck Denver Asks, What's in the Bible? Now, Erick and his wife and three daughters live in Nashville, where they are active in their local church, and I'm so glad that he's been able to carve out some time in his busy schedule to be with us today. So, Erick, I'm excited for today's conversation. Let me just start with just a quick background question. What is like the elevator pitch for Minno, your company? We heard just a little bit about like the families and kids and online, offline. Share with us a little bit more to just frame the conversation today.
Yeah, so I think we always say that we're really a kids and media technology company helping families experience Jesus every day on and off the screen. But we do that in a number of different ways. And so, the primary way we do that is through our streaming platform, Minno Kids, which is sort of like Netflix for Christian kids. But I think what you'll find is the content is a lot different than you'll find on Netflix. We're super rigorous in curating content and then also producing content. So we actually are just started doing originals. And so whole goal for us is what can we do to create media and technology experiences for families that really allow them to experience Jesus every day. Even the name of the company, Minno, is based on the Greek word meno for abide from John 15. Because that passage had such a huge impact on my life. And what does it mean? Even, walking with God for decades, recognizing he really wants to be in relationship with me and for me to experience him daily. And that's really what we're looking for Minno to do in the lives of families.
Wow, I love this. And I will tell you, just as my experience as a church online pastor, the one big gap I think that we see from a ministry point of view, from a pastoral point of view, is content, really good content for kids, youth. I mean, that category is just almost like ignored in so much of the church. And I just love bringing you on here today to focus and highlight on what you guys do. Now, you guys, again, it's a huge catalog of video and content that you guys have, right? First of all, like we talked about Phil Vischer, you have VeggieTales, I believe, on the platform, right?
Yeah, we have one of the largest collections of VeggieTales in the world on our platform.
Awesome. And then you got, I think you have like over 100 other Christian TV shows that you guys have made available to people who...
Yeah, I think we've got probably over 140, 150 now. So we're continuing to add titles. And it's not just, I think when people think about Minno and they think, oh, that's sort of like Disney Plus or Netflix, it's really different in the sense that what we've tried to do is really think about the needs of Christian parents and kids. And so we have formats called 5-Minute Family Devotional, which is based on my challenges as a Christian parent, struggling with my daughters of what does it mean to have devotional time. So we want to make super easy for parents to have devotional time with their kids. And then
wait, can we just nerd out on that? Because I think having been a pastor in a church, one of the things that I saw a lot is that parents feel guilty, I think, a little bit in so many churches where like they know they're supposed to be discipling their kids, but they're not confident about it. And they don't like, I've heard from parents that they want to like summarize what the preacher said on Sunday in the main room, but it's hard to actually do that. You need to become your own, like, I didn't go to seminary as a parent, like that, all those thoughts come into mind. So this 5-minute devotional, can we just talk seriously, literally about that? Like, how is a parent supposed to use that? What's the best practice that you're seeing people do?
Yeah, and Kenny, I want to just to address your comment sort of overall, like one of my motivations for getting involved with Minno, because there's one sense where like I flew helicopters, I was a product manager and managed book buying at Amazon. I'm kind of like the last guy that you would ever find in children's media. But I've had the opportunity to be part of planting 2 churches. And I grew up spiritually with the Navigators, which was heavy discipleship focus. Yes. And what struck me when we planted a church in Seattle is a lot of the parents were new believers. Like they were coming to Christ and they're like clueless. Like, how am I supposed to tell my kids about Jesus? Like we're so grateful for children's ministry, but we don't really know what to do when we go home. And the other thing that really struck me strategically is we lose about 2/3 of our kids when they leave high school and go to college. Oftentimes they don't really know what they believe. And so my thinking is, man, if we could have a dynamic children's media platform that could really help kids understand their faith and empower parents to be able to share their faith, it might be the best church growth strategy we've ever could employ. Because I think keeping our kids and helping them live vital lives with Jesus really should be first and foremost as we think about church growth, but we have to play the long game. And oftentimes children's ministry doesn't get the investment that it probably deserves. In regards to 5-Minute Family Devotion, one of the things that I found was, I've been blessed by having great mentors and spiritual advisors around me. And I'd sit there with a Bible, a children's Bible. We'd have some DVDs. I'd have a prayer book. And I'm like, and it's like hard to keep kids' attention when they're seeing so many great shows on television. Yes. And I was sitting there struggling. And I'm like, you know what? I have an editor. I can talk to my team about this. We can solve this problem. And what I really wanted to do is create a situation where I'm a big believer. There was an Anglican pastor by the name of Robert Banks, who was one of his books. He talks about the wisdom of the laity, that, we're all saints in Christ and God's given us everything we need to be effective in ministry, no matter who we are, if we're in Christ. And what I recognize is most parents actually can do a pretty good job. They just need a little bit of help getting started. Yeah. Yes. And so what I really wanted was 5-Minute Family Devotion to be that. I think about it as like rock climbing and you're looking at a sheer cliff, like where do I grab for the first time? And what I find is if you set parents up, tee it up, they can do great because they're experts on their kids. They know their kids better than anybody. But the spiritual content and the biblical content is what they're most uncomfortable with. But if you frame it for them, it's great. And so what we decided to do was let's put together just a 5-minute video that's got a teachable moment from our videos, because we're spending all this money, hundreds of thousands of dollars to make great content. Let's let parents use that, but let's put a scripture verse and a prayer with that, and then give them some questions to ask their kids at the end. And what we found is parents who they're like, what is this, when they first sign up? But now what happens is as soon as they discover it, they're like using it in the minivan on the way to school. They'll use it for, devotional time before you go to bed. And what's great about it is because of the questions, oftentimes you don't spend 5 minutes, you spend a half hour. Yeah. And I'm always like, my kids are always like, as they are getting older, they're like, I don't want to do this. And then, it's like 40 minutes later, it's like, I thought you guys didn't want to do this, but they have all, but kids are really curious about who God is. Absolutely. But we don't create the space or the opportunity for that conversation to take place.
Oh, I love that. The reason why I'm like honing in on this a little bit is because I think it's easy to casually dismiss a service like Minno, where it's like, oh, it's just like Netflix. Let's just put it on their iPads and just be passive parents like that. But like for a church leader that's listening today, having this on your recommendation list as a tool for parents who are motivated, right? We all have them in all of our churches. We know, you know who they are if you're listening right now. There are at least a couple of them that you know that are trying to invest in their kids intentionally, but they're looking for better quality resources. There just aren't that many out there. And I feel like if you're able to hook them with this and show them that they actually can do this intentionally, and at the end of the day, I think, Erick, you're making the parent the hero, right? You're actually giving them a tool so they feel confident, and then they can actually engage in a relationship with their kids, which I think at the end of the day is so wholesome, right? It's just, that's the magic.
Yeah, it's interesting, Kenny. We actually use that language internally of what can we do to set parents up to be heroes in their kids' lives. Because I think we've all had those moments right before we go to bed and we're reflecting on the day, might be in prayer, and you think, you know what? I put points on the board as a dad today. I put points on the board as a mom today. And so often parents feel compromised. They feel like it's more survival. Like, what can I do to just get through the day? And for us, it's awesome when we get these feedback from parents of like, Minno allowed me to do my job as a parent today, and it was awesome. And, you know, we have a tendency to underestimate what kids can understand and overestimate what parents can understand. And what we find is, you know, subversively, one of the things I want to accomplish is discipling parents through their kids. Yes. God's truth is God's truth, whether it's for kids or for grown-ups. But we want to be able to communicate it to kids in a way that they can understand it. But it's been amazing to me how many parents write in and say, I've learned so much or I've grown so much just participating in the programming on Minno. And so, you know, and I'll just share one story because I think it's a good illustration of what's possible. My eldest daughter has type 1 diabetes, and early when we started the company, she was watching the Buck Denver Ask What's in the Bible show, and the first episode's on original sin. And we were driving down the road in the minivan, and we passed the cemetery on our left. And out of the back of the minivan, she asked me, Dad, do I have type 1 diabetes because of original sin? And I was like, just blown away by that question. And she said, but what that means is when I go to heaven, I'll be healed. I'll have a new body, you know, and I was practically in tears. But what was interesting is she was putting all this together by watching these shows. And she was, you know, and so kids are synthesizers and they're learning and putting so much together. It's really important, as you mentioned, because I hear this as we talk to folks. Oh, kids cartoons for Christian kids, awesome. Yes. Yeah. And what I would say is we've lowered our standard to mainstream's expectations of entertainment. Because teaching doesn't have to be boring. And so we really look at is what can we do to help to get these spiritual truths across to kids in the most fun and entertaining way possible.
Such good stuff. I totally agree with all that. And I've had experiences when my kids were young, where my son in particular just would land these big questions from the back seat, with the Son of Man and all that. And I feel like we don't respect them enough, that they actually have the capacity and they are critical thinkers so much earlier than we give them credit for as children, as youth, etc. So I love this. Love this tool. Let's shift a little bit, because I know that, you know, as a community, we've done so much stuff of investing in digital. And, you know, we have a community that all things digital is so important to everybody at this point in 2022 and beyond. Have you seen any trends lately that are working in the church space that might be notable?
Yeah, it's interesting. And Barna's just published a study on this in regards to children's ministry. And I think what we're finding, there are a couple of things that we're finding that are the challenges and obstacles. Obviously, COVID was a huge obstacle in regards to children's ministry. And as a guy who's been involved in churches, small churches and church plants, you know, my first thought when the COVID hit was we really do everything we can for the church, because most churches are really going to struggle just even what does it mean to stream the grown-up service, because, you know, that's not something that most churches were doing pre-pandemic. Yes. And so what we know is is really a challenge to connect with kids if you just think about it as I'm getting information into their heads. But if you look at it from a church standpoint of what can we do to form relationships with those kids, and what does it mean to extend that relationship past Sunday? Is there a way that as a church I can participate in that family or give that family a way for them to succeed? Wow. Then what you see is better outcomes. And there, we try to do that as a direct to consumer or direct to family company. But there are a lot of curriculum companies that are also recognizing this. But I think the key issue for so many churches is what does it mean to impact kids when they're only showing up once or twice a month? And I think that's going to be a real challenge for the church. But for those children's pastors who are really intentional and working with their volunteers to help form those relationships, build those relationships, it really can be transformational and impactful for a generation.
I love that thread of relationship development and all you're thinking. Let's look at Minno. So from your perspective, I think you've been very intentional in building this company and the offerings that you're serving the families with. What makes Minno different from other similar services out there then? At the end of the day, what does it boil down to?
Yeah, because there are a number of options out there. Like I'll be the first one, and I think each of them has different strengths. I think what we've really tried to do is think kids first, faith first, and then also think offline, online. And that's really unique to us because I think there are Christian streaming services that are that mirror Netflix and trying to kind of do everything. And what we believe is kids need to be first-class citizens. They need the first-class experience. And so what we've done is we've really designed Minno to be a place where kids, it's designed for kids. And so it's fun from the get-go. And some of the product releases that we've got coming up, probably in the next 90 days, we're actually going to do a preschool UI or user interface. So preschoolers can navigate Minno just as easily as, their big sister and their big brother. The second is I'd say the rigor and intentionality we have around content. I think there's a sense that anything Christian is okay for my kids. And what we find is with Christian children's content, it's really hard to do Christian children's content well because it's easy to be funny and tell hilarious stories and be entertaining. And it's somewhat straightforward to be biblical and theologically sound. It's hard to do them together. We went through a process where we were licensing a lot of content. And what we recognized is probably about a third of it wasn't that good. It either was biblically not sound, it was the production values were really poor, or it was boring. And I think there's a perspective of, we need to get as much content as possible. And I think we as a team have made a decision that when you watch a Minno show, it will be quality. And we actually have a 53-point checklist that every show has to pass that really is overview on theology, overview on production values, and then on story and fun we do.
Tell me a little bit about, you have this intentionality that we start online in the interaction, right? But then it extends offline. How do you ensure that actually starts to happen? What does that look like? What does that mean in terms of from your curation point of view, production point of view, and then the actual experience?
Yeah, so right now I'd still say we're early because we're only 3 years old as a company. And so one of our most significant offerings is the Minno Laugh and Grow Bible for Kids. And it won the Christian Book Award in 2020. Phil Vischer, who created VeggieTales, wrote it, so it's very funny. But it was really designed with a lot of the intentionality of at the end of every chapter, there's family talk. Where we give parents prompts to engage their kids to kind of talk through the Bible story. And we set it up with their 52 stories. So it's not just sort of what I call kind of the greatest hits of the Bible per se, but we're really trying to take a child through the Bible, Genesis to Revelation. Now, we made that Bible before we could actually put together the video of that. So we're in the middle of producing that Bible series now. But what we tried to do is what can we do to create those experiences for parents that create catalysts for conversations? And so another offering where I'd say we've done a much better job of this is in our life guides. And so one thing I recognized is a lot of times parents just need cliff notes. they're not going to read a book on kids' emotions. They're not going to read a book on praying with kids, but they'll read a 10 to 12 page download. And so we've created these life guides that make of those available to our members, so they've got access to those. And then kids love worlds. So when kids watch a show, they like to enter into the world. Yeah. And so we provide a lot of coloring pages, activity guides, downloadables, so mom and dad can spend time with their children. When they see a show, they can color those characters or have something offline to experience. And again, what we recognize, like, we're parents, like, we're as concerned about screen time as our customers are. And so, but kids are, they're learners. They synthesize stuff. And so when you do this stuff offline, in addition to what someone's seeing on the screen, it's really sticky. One thing that's interesting when they did research on Sesame Street, when it first came out, was there was hardly any improvement in kids' literacy watching Sesame Street, with one exception, if they talked to their parents about the show afterwards. And if kids if kids talk to their parents, or parents interacted with their kids about the content they're seeing, the gains were astronomical. And so we really think about what we're doing with Minno in the same way of what can we do to be a catalyst for conversations that parents really want to have, but don't necessarily know where to start.
Wow. Practically speaking, so your content is aimed at what age range in the family?
I'd say birth to 5th grade. So we've got some baby content where I know, like, again, we're proponents. You want to limit screen time under 2 years of age, but I know there are moms who are just trying to, at home. I've talked to some moms who are like, I just need to go to the bathroom, or I just need to get something done. And so, but all the way up to probably 5th grade, middle school. And so, and that's how we kind of think about it. We really curate it from kind of birth to 10 years, 11 years of age.
I love it. And then it's ad-free content, or are there ads supported?
It's ad-free. So we are a subscription membership service. And so we do that because it's been pretty clear from us, our parents don't want any ads, and we don't think that's appropriate for our platform.
And then how are my kids supposed to watch this? Do they have to go to a browser all the time, like on their laptop or something? What's the distribution?
Yeah, so Minno is available on multiple platforms. You can watch it on the web and when you log in, but the primary way most people watch is on mobile devices and tablets, or on Roku or Apple TV and Kindle Fire. So we've got those 3 main smart TV platforms, as well as all Apple devices and Droid devices.
Gotcha. And then I think you can download shows for offline usage, right? Like if I'm traveling or in the car, et cetera?
Yes, you can. We want to save people's data plans.
That, I think, is amazing. I'm sure you had to go through some loops with licensing and all that stuff. But anyway, that to me, from a consumer's point of view, thank you for thinking of the consumer first. I will just say that. That's a game changer. Perfect. So if someone's watching here today, if they want to learn more about Minno, try it out, or connect with you to ask more questions, et cetera, especially with church leaders in particular, because, if they're going to recommend it to their people, their community, they probably want to know more about it. What's the best way that they can follow up and learn more about the service and connect with you?
Yeah, so they can follow up on the service by going to gominno.com. That's GOMINNO.com. There's a lot of information on our About page about who we are and kind of how we approach things. And then you can also learn a lot about Minno on the App Store. So we've got pretty good content and overview on the App Store. The one thing I mentioned for church leaders is since the first week of the pandemic, we actually launched Church at Home. So every week, churches would have access to a Church at Home program if they weren't able to develop that internally. And we've turned that into what we call the Minno Day Show, which is actually a daily show that's almost like Sunday school kind of in a program on a daily basis. If they want to reach out to me, they can email me directly, Erick, ERICK.Goss, GOSS, @gominno.com. I'm also on LinkedIn and follow kind of posting and direct messages there. And so those are both ways that they can get in touch with me.
Love it. Wow. I think this space has so much more development. I love the fact that you guys are coming out of the gate strong, and you're going to have to come back on the podcast a year or two later, because I am sure that you're going to have so many new product or different things that are offered. Especially, I think, again, from the church leader's perspective as a practitioner, this is the type of thing that we need more of to help the parents do their job as parents, do it well. So I appreciate everything that you guys and your team has been doing for the kingdom here. Erick, thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody else, if you guys have any experience with Minno, please chime in, put it in the comments, and share with other families and other church leaders how you're seeing it being used and what are the benefits. If you guys have any other questions, put them in the comments. We'll be monitoring them. And again, we got to have Erick back on pretty soon. I think you have a lot of other experiences that can help church communicators, whether it be the spokesperson role or Amazon, etc. I think some of those things that you might be able to help us as practitioners, as heralds for the gospel here in the church communications world. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us, Erick. Thank you to the listeners. We'll catch you here next time on the Church Communications Podcast.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Church Communications Podcast. If you want to learn more, join over 30,000 church leaders in our Facebook group at churchcommunications.com/group. If you liked today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It's the most impactful way you can help us reach more church leaders and equip them to better communicate for the church. Finally, don't forget to check out our website at churchcommunications.com. Thanks for listening.